Good afternoon and welcome to our program. In today's webinar, the top 5 reasons why CFOs are leaving QuickBooks, we'll review some of the telltale signs that your organization may be ready to move to a more robust financial management system. I'm Don Carnevale, Director of Marketing at Broadpoint Technologies, and I'll be the moderator for today's event. If during the webinar you require assistance with live meeting, please call 866-493-2825 and ask for technical support. Also, at any time during the presentation, you can press F5 on your keyboard to view the presentation in full screen. Press F5 again to return to your normal screen. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them using the Q&A button at the top of the screen. We'll have some time at the end of the presentation to address your questions. I'd also like to mention some other upcoming Broadpoint events. We're hosting a webinar next month to discuss best practices and technology solutions for better CRM data security, as well as a session on automating manual processes to reduce or even eliminate paper-based approvals and payments. We'll also be attending Microsoft Convergence 2013 in New Orleans in March. More information is available on these and other events on our website at www.broadpoint.net/events. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Dipesh Saxena, Senior Business Solutions Consultant at Broadpoint Technologies. Dipesh?
Thanks, Don. I hope you can all hear me. In today's session, like Don just said, that we're going to talk about the top reasons why CFOs are leaving QuickBooks. I'll try and keep it short and to the point. We will look at the top 5 challenges that management is facing with these systems. And then I will quickly dive into showing you some of the functionalities of Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013, and we can then have your question and answer session after that. So when we look at the challenges that are being faced by financial controllers or people in finance who are using systems like QuickBooks, we try to figure out what are the top 5 reasons which, make people look at other systems. So let's just go through them. One of the biggest reasons you would realize is getting financial information. So we spend a lot of time collecting all that data, feeding into our accounting systems or other ERPs, and the goal typically is to be able to get that data out as information. One of the challenges is that how easy or how accessible is that information, and if that is not something which is easy for you to get from the system, probably that's time for you to change to a more robust and easier to handle system. The other challenge would be integrating. So if you look at the systems these days, you have accounting systems, you have CRM, customer relationship management systems, you have front-end operational systems for managing events, for managing memberships. There are other manufacturing or inventory-related systems. There are so many other systems. And when you look at your core system that you're using, you would certainly like to get to a system which easily integrates and is able to talk to these other systems, which makes it easier for you to work with that system and let that grow. So you're not really jumping from one system to another system based on the features and functionalities that you require. So that is one other big challenge that people are facing with the current systems. Tracking and traceability is another big issue. Like we talked, that we have all these transactions, all this data that we capture into our system, and we would like to track that and see that how that data has gone in. We would like to track and trace through the different audit trails that you can have. What was the source document? Where did it start? Where did it end into the GL? If you look at the GL, you'd certainly want to know where did that particular line come in from. Similarly, you have multiple users who sign on to the system and work in it, so you should be able to track who has entered what data, when has that data been modified. So things like that are also becoming a challenge which needs to be handled so that the system is efficient in providing all that to the users and to the management. Scalability. One of the biggest issues these days is with the increasing number of systems that are available, increasing number of functionalities and features that you need to handle your business, the system could be scaled not just from a volume of transaction or the number of user point of view, but you should also be able to scale your system in terms of its ability to handle other functions in your organization. We'll talk about that, and that is another challenge which can be addressed because of the newer systems that are coming. Lastly, data security and integrity. Very obvious with all these systems that are available on the internet or applications within an organization, there is a need to have secure data, and not just secure, the data that's being entered should have integrity. So how do we maintain that? Is the system capable of handling the integrity? Can it be secure enough so people can do what they're supposed to do and not be able to get into other areas? So these are the kind of challenges that we want to address. And in today's session, we have just limited them to these top 5 challenges so that we can address them and then look at. I'm sure there are other areas you would want to look into, and there would be things you are facing challenges which you can bring out in the Q&A session or just send us an email. So having said that, let me move on to my next slide, where I'm going to talk about how do we get financial information from Dynamics GP solution. So when you look at a solution like Dynamics GP, it has already got over 700 standard reports built into the system. And when we say standard reports, these are frameworks of data that you can actually set up your own options and run that report and get that information. So it's not, for example, you need to run a trial balance. The trial balance could be by period. The trial balance could be by a range of accounts. It could be a summary trial balance, or it could be a detailed trial balance. So these standard reports are frameworks, and then you can set up your options and get that information out with those parameters that you're setting up. GP also has another financial reporting tool called the Management Reporter. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, there used to be a module called FRX, which now has been renamed and redesigned completely because it is totally web-enabled and is called the Management Reporter. And with Management Reporter, it now gives you the ability to publish your financial reports. So you can do your balance sheet, P&L, cash flow using the Management Reporter, but you can also schedule them to run. You can put them on a scheduler to be published to a certain site, or they can be saved on a folder so that people can access them on demand, and you don't need to have somebody just running that all the time somebody requests for a report. Another addition to GP, because of its being a Microsoft product, as you know, is its tight integration to Excel. Now, you know that Excel can be used to extract data, or you can, pull out data and import, export from Excel and put it in the layout that you want and use Excel to get that information. But what has been done with Dynamics GP is that Excel is tightly integrated with Dynamics GP database. So you're actually using Excel to look at live data, and it refreshes the data every time you actually go and run that report. So you're not actually creating a two-dimensional flat report that has to be updated every time. Another feature that allows you to actually get information out of GP is SRS, which is SQL Reporting Services. So since SQL Server is the database that's used with Dynamics GP, Microsoft has come up with around 70 standard reports that can be run using SQL Reporting Services. And I'll shortly show you in GP that these are not things that you have to go technically and run that from SQL Server. They are all available from the application. And finally, GP also allows you to publish these reports in real time to something called the business portal. And you can also have data available there so that people can inquire on the data, they can run their trial balance reports or financial reports and get that information from the portal rather than having somebody to publish or give that report to them. So these are the areas within financial information that GP has added or has got additional features to address, access to financial information. Let's talk about the second point regarding integration to other systems. So we talked about GP or any of the systems that are there today. They need to be able to integrate to each other so that you can not just import and export data across, but in order to reduce your manual data entry between systems, you should be able to use certain tools that have built-in adapters which can bring in the data. So for that, and the data could be, coming from front-end operational systems that you have. They could be from something like a CRM or a membership management or some other industry solution that you're using in your operational part of the business, but that needs to send information back into either your accounting system or your GL or AR. So for that, you would need tools to be able to integrate that information. You could also have other in-house systems that you're using for invoicing and billing, or you could have something from the website that you want to integrate. So all these integration questions are handled by some of the tools that are available within GP. One of them is called the Integration Manager. What this does is that it allows you to schedule or import and integrate data either on a batch basis or on a transaction basis. And it's not just importing or, populating tables using this tool. You're actually validating the data when it comes in. So it would look for, say for instance, you're integrating a journal voucher. So Integration Manager, while importing, is going to go and check whether you actually have a chart of account created or not. So if somebody makes a mistake and has not got the right chart of account in the journal voucher, it's not going to import that. So it's also validating when it imports information. And using Integration Manager, you can integrate master records. So if you're creating chart of accounts or customers or vendors or items, you can use Integration Manager to bring that data in. Chart of accounts, you might want to create a new department and there's a whole lot of accounts that you want to create. So instead of having somebody go and manually enter each account, you can import that account. Same thing with customers or vendors. And this tool is also actually very useful when we are migrating from one system to another system. Especially if you're talking of QuickBooks, Microsoft has already come up with a tool to migrate information from QuickBooks into GP, and they have already written those adapters so that data can just be brought in, and which makes it very easy to bring data from QuickBooks into GP. So Integration Manager also allows you to integrate transactions, so things like journal entries, payables invoices, your sales invoices, or even fixed assets information. If you want to bring it in, you can use Integration Manager to bring that data in. Another tool that is used is called eConnect. Now that also allows you to bring in data, But unlike Integration Manager, where you would integrate data on a scheduled or a batch basis, eConnect would allow you to create real-time integrations. So things like cash receipts or invoices which you have on your website, and you don't want somebody to be sitting and waiting there and updating that information or running that batch process. In real time, eConnect can actually straight away populate data in GP, and it's available for you to do your transaction. Of course, it will look at all the validations and required checks that you would be setting in. So that's about integration with other systems. Let's talk about tracking and traceability. Transactions, we talked about entering transactions. So there's so much data that we've entered into the system. How would GP allow you to track that? So all the transactions that we enter in GP, they are all tagged with audit trail codes. So anytime somebody enters a transaction, internally the system assigns an audit trail code to it. And it also then allows you to track right from the source document which you have entered up to how did it end up in the GL. And you can go both ways. So you can start from the GL and look at the origin of the transaction and go right to the source, or you can look at the source and based on the audit trail get to know that where is this going to end up in. So that transaction tracking is available with GP 2013. Tracking of serial and lot items. So serially marked number items or products if you have lot, somebody is doing production in batches and there are lots that are being entered. Those can be tracked for items within GP. Lastly, audit trails. So on the top two options, we saw transactions that are being entered into the system which can be tracked. But when it comes to audit trails, if we would like to know who is the user who has entered a transaction, did he modify the transaction? What time was it entered? So if there's a new chart that was created, when was it created? Was it modified or not? Was it deleted? Those kind of things can be tracked using audit trails. It will keep a track of what was the status before and after the change. So you can see the data before and after. You can pull out the data into Excel to look at the history that's there. And it allows you to know which user and which specific user has done that transaction. Again, these are all controlled with securities, so you can assign securities that people can look at certain audit trails and they cannot look at audit trails. This allows you to trace transactions as they're entered in the system and changes are made to it. So that's done using audit trails. We had touched upon scalability. Systems, how is the system going to grow with you? So with GP, you can have a few users. Actually, it could be a standalone single user system, but it can grow into up to 1,000 user systems. And there are existing systems with so many users that are being currently run. Scaling it in terms of deployment, you can have a client-server-based system. You can have a hosted system. GP 2013 has a web client that's enabled, so it could be a completely thin client that you can use, and it's capable of being deployed on a cloud. So it's completely cloud-enabled. When it comes to talking about scalability, does the system scale with your system, with your business? So when your business is growing, how does GP grow with the business? So one, we talked about you can add users or you can deploy it in a different environment. But in terms of features and functionality, so if you start doing business with a different country, you have multi-currency. It's available in multiple languages. You have multiple companies that you can define, so you can have intercompany transactions that you can do. If you start doing projects, you can have, there are modules for project accounting. Human resource and payroll, that can be done in-house using GP modules. Procurement, order processing, requisitioning systems, so you can have web-based requisitioning with workflow and approvals that can just feed into your GL or your purchasing or your AP. Manufacturing, you start a new branch which is manufacturing certain items, you can use the manufacturing modules within GP to do that. Field service management, so if somebody is selling equipment and that needs to be serviced, you can handle service calls, you can handle warranties and repairs for those equipments that are being sold. They can all be handled using field service management. Time and expense recording and reporting can be done using modules in GP. Electronic banking, it's enabled for electronic banking. You can set this up. There are predefined formats that can be used with different banks, and how they need it, they're already defined within GP. So these would be modules that are something which you can add into GP as your business grows, so that you're actually just growing with the same system and not having to start using a completely new system and then start thinking about integrating that system. And when it comes to scaling the system, it's not just modules within GP. There are hundreds of independent software vendors who have solutions which are tightly integrated with GP. So these software vendors work with Microsoft, and the products that they come up with are very specific features and functionalities that people are looking for, which may not be in the core product in GP, but those are available using through these ISVs, and these can just be plugged in just with a straight away, a simple install. So there are hundreds of solutions that are available like this. Things like, you're cutting checks, but you need the magnetic ink character recognition. There is a third-party module that does that. You want to have images of your signatures to be secure, and those should be imprinted on your checks. There are modules for that. So somebody's using, electronic approvals of invoices with third parties, those can be done. So there are a lot of such modules which allow you to just plug and play with GP without having to move away from the solution. Lastly, just let's talk about, before we jump into looking at GP, data security and integrity. So within GP, there are multiple levels of security that we can define, starting from the system level. So who is allowed to create new users? Who can actually set up and configure the system? And this user can be completely different from a power user. So that is one level of security that can be defined. Company access. People could be having access to multiple companies or to one company. You can restrict them. And from within that company, which are the areas they need to work in, can be defined using the security model. We can define different tasks, which are, the tasks could be access to certain windows, or running some reports, or creating some master records which are under files. So they can all be defined as tasks. And those tasks then can be grouped into different roles. So you can create a role for an AP clerk, or for a purchasing manager, or for an operations or an IT person. Those roles would then have different tasks under them, and that will define where the person or the user can get into the system and work. Individual users, so you can have users who have a certain role, but there are a few features that they need in addition to what that role has. So you can define that individual user with his specific rights and access levels. Module specific. Some users might want to just work in certain modules, And within those modules, if you have tasks which still need to be controlled using passwords, they can be defined within the module for certain tasks using passwords. Account level security. You can restrict the chart of account to be visible to certain people for certain departments so that they can work only in those chart of accounts that are assigned to them. And finally, you can go to the field level security. So even though a user is having access to a particular window, say an AP voucher, but within that, you can restrict certain fields that they cannot see, or you can make them mandatory, or you can hide them or make them password protected. So up to a field level, you can go down to the security when a user accesses anything in GP. So that's on data security and integrity. I'll quickly move into showing you Dynamics GP as a product. All right. So this is a screen, the home page on Dynamics GP. So once you sign into GP, this is the home page that comes up. And we initially talked about the reporting that's available in GP. So if I go into any of these options here, so if I go into financial, there is a reports menu which allows us to have all the kinds of reports which are predefined. So if I go into a trial balance, I'd mentioned that this is like a framework that of a report where you can actually create different options. So you can go to an option, modify that option, and in that you can define whether it's a detailed report or a summary report, what are the accounts you want to see, whether you're running it for open or history year. You can set up parameters by account, by segment, or by currency or date. So you can define these parameters and then run this report. So this one report for a trial balance could actually have multiple options created here. So depending on which user needs what kind of a trial balance, you can configure that trial balance here. You can also redirect it to whatever destination you want. So it could go to screen, printer, or a file, and you could directly PDF it from here so that it comes up in a PDF format. So those are canned reports which are available in GP for you to directly run. So there are for trial balance, for budgets, for accounts, fixed assets. So every module here would have reports that you can run from here. We also talked about Excel reports and SQL Server reports. So all those reports are listed here. So if you go to a report list, that shows all the reports that can be run. I'm just going to go into Excel reports because, like we mentioned, talked earlier, Excel is tightly integrated. And when you're looking at a report, you really don't need to go into Excel and run that report, though that is also possible. But these are all Excel reports which are stored, as you can see, on your local drive. So they have a live link to the company and the series that you're looking at. And you can just actually run it from here. So you just double click on this and it launches Excel and it will populate the data that's coming live from GP. All this data is coming live from Great Plains. And you can go to data and it will show you all the connections. You can refresh the data from here. So if somebody goes and enters a new transaction, you can just click refresh and it will add that transaction into this Excel sheet. You can also have this Excel sheet sitting on your local drive and you can run it from there and it will launch exactly the same way as it did from here. But it always has the security in place. So it is allowing only the users who have access. So if somebody doesn't have access to the financial options, they wouldn't see this report. And even if they go to Excel and try to launch it from there, securities would still be working, so they wouldn't be able to go and run a report against any feature or any module that they want to by bypassing the security. That cannot be bypassed. Let me quickly go into, we talked about Management Reporter. The Management Reporter is a module which is used for reporting on your balance sheet, your cash flow, your income statement. So these reports, this reporting tool sits on your chart of account and makes it very easy for you to create any of the reports. Quickly, just to show you, if I'm going to open up a report called the detailed income statement, and I'm in the reports definition area, it opens up this page where the building blocks, if you see this part of it, there are 3 building blocks. There's row, there's column, and there's a tree. So these are the things that you put together to create the management or the report that you're looking for. So in an income statement, if I go and open up the row definition, this is where we have mapped what do we want to see on sales. So product sales is my 401,100 main account. So this is where we just go and map this. And this is as easy as Excel that you can just either write it in or you have lookup. So if you double click, it opens up your whole chart of account. Now in this chart of account that you see, I have over 20 parameters that have been defined. So it will allow you to pick them up from here and you can create your layout for the income statement. You can have formulas, and these are all listed right here. So it shows you all the formulas. All you're doing is just picking them up and putting them into this. And it's got a completely Excel-like interface. You can even copy and paste between Excel and MR, Management Reporter. So that's a row definition. You then have a column definition where you go and define what columns do you want to see, which is, again, you would say my column is description. You would say it's a financial dimension because that's what picks up the account. You can say it's a calculated row, so you can put in a formula. You can say it's, it's another worksheet, so you can assign another worksheet to get data into it. But that's how simple it is to just define your columns into this, and this actual could be your actual data, or it could be a budget that's been defined into the system. So all you do is you just bring in the budget here, and that becomes your column. And once the column is defined, you can define a tree. Now on this particular report, I don't have a tree assigned to it, but if I go to tree definitions here, tree could be different business units, tree could be consolidation of companies or departments or items. So you can create a tree. Quickly to show you, if you look at a business unit tree, these are all my different departments which become a part of a tree. So when we define a tree, and when you go back to looking at the report definition, the same income statement can be filtered with a tree so that you can look at it for a particular department. And that's what makes it so easy for you to create these new reports for balance sheet, P&L, or budget versus actual, your running totals, or your rolling balances, or your forecast. All those can be defined here. And with Management Reporter, what you would do is you can set them up on a scheduler so they can be scheduled. And in the output side, you can actually go and either publish it to a library, or you can publish it to SharePoint or some other folder where people have access to and can self-serve. They can come and just run the report. There are other restrictions that you can put on this. Do you want to see what level of drill down do you want to see? Financial account or transaction, you can drill down to that level. You can put in posted or unposted balance, or just unposted only. So all these selections can be done. And once you run that report, it goes and sits into a library in which you have all these folders here, and these folders can have security on who has access to this. There could be a public folder, anybody can look at that, but you can restrict it to finance or IT depending on which report they would be able to look at. So if we just go and launch this report from here, it actually launches. I'm just going to expand it a little bit so you can see some numbers. And it comes up with these. So these are all rows that we saw in the row definition, and these are the columns. So you can have multiple columns. There could be a budget column. There could be a forecast column, which is basically formulas running on that. And from here, you can actually drill down into the report, and that takes you to the detail for that particular account. And if you've allowed yourself to go to a transaction level, you can further drill down from here. So that's Management Reporter, which is one of the most powerful financial reporting tools that you can be using with Dynamics GP. I'm going to go back to GP, Dynamics GP 2013 here. There's another tool that is very effective in GP called the Smart List. So when we enter all that data and capture all that information into our systems, tools like the Smart List make it very easy for you to pull that data out, because say if I go to financial, I can actually go and look at all my accounts listed right here. So with the Smart List, it allows you to explore these. You can sort them by columns. You can add columns from the database. It works as a query tool. And from here, you can actually go to different inquiries directly from this. You can export it to Excel. You can take it to Word. You can create new Smart Lists as you want from different modules that are there in GP. So Smart List is a very powerful tool when you need to pull out information from GP for any purposes. You can send it to Excel and then save it there. And when you send it to Excel, you can actually create a solution so that the next time you export it, you don't need to rewrite your formulas. Whatever your Excel sheet formulas are there, they would stay, and this would just refresh all the data. All right. So that was on the financial side of the reporting side of GP that you can use to look at data. We briefly talked about Integration Manager. I just want to give you a quick look of what Integration Manager does. I'll just open up some predefined integrations, and these are integrations which have been defined with the module when it comes. This is not something which the user has to define. So things like integrating chart of account or budgets or fixed assets or a GL transaction or your inventory transaction or your purchase order or your payables voucher, these are all predefined adapters. And if I just open up one of these here, it's pretty straightforward. There's a source which is linked up to your file, which could be a text file or Excel, which you can save as a text. So that becomes your source data, and your destination is where you're bringing that transaction into GP. So here you would come and just define that what's the voucher number, what's the description, is it going into a batch, what's the document date, and all this information that goes in, which are the account numbers that you're going to hit, the debits and credits, all those can be mapped from the file. And all these adapters would then validate that data before it brings it in. And anytime there is a problem with it, there is a log that the system keeps where you can go and see what really went wrong, and that can be fixed. All right, so I will not save this. Let's go and look at, I'm going to go back to GP. So here the other thing I want to show is we talked about tracking and traceability. So within the financials, I can go and look at a summary inquiry for a particular account number. So if I just go and pick up, say, the cash account, this summary view shows me the period balances for this particular account. But from here, if I want to trace back, I can drill down into and get to the detailed inquiry. So then it's showing me for the month of April, all my transactions within that. I can see the source of the transactions right here. So I know this is a payables check. This is a cash receipt that has come in. And from here, I can actually drill down and go to the journal entry, which has the audit trail, which is telling me where this has come from. It's telling me which batch was it entered, the receivables cash receipt batch, and this is the transaction that was created. And actually, we can go down to the receipts entry where this receipt was actually recorded. So this was a cash receipt from Aaron Fitz for $235. And this would also show me the apply information wherein I can see that this was a standard invoice, $21.90, for which we received cash. And you can actually go down to the invoice and look at the invoice of what was actually either sold on that invoice or when was it sent and all that information. So you're actually drilling down right from the GL cash account to the invoice that was paid in that cash. And you'll notice that when these transactions entered, this standard invoice, this number follows right through, so you can have traceability. You can track it right across all the modules that it has flown. Let's also look at some tracking on the inventory side where we talked about serial and lot tracking. So serial numbers, if you know the serial number, if you want to find out the serial number, you can go to serial or lot track and get that serial number and where it was sold. With this trace, it allows you to trace all transactions for either a serial number or a lot number, or you want to find out all the serial numbers sold to a customer, or there could be a situation where you want to recall certain serial numbers or lot numbers, in which case you just select the item and then the system actually picks up all the related, it goes through and picks up every transaction relating to the serial numbers that are there, and then you can start inquiring on individual serial numbers. It also tracks down that if that serial number is actually a part of a bill of material, which could be in manufacturing or inventory, it will show you which bill was used for it. In this case, like I can see that serial number 1 has come from this transaction entry, and it'll list out all the serial numbers and lot numbers, and we can just go and pick up any one of them, and it shows where that transaction is coming from. This is the same tracking that you can have for lot numbers that you can do. And like we saw on the GL side, you can drill down to the actual document number. This is an unposted transaction, so it's not showing me. If I go and pick up another sales transaction, I can go and open up the sales transaction entry on which this item was sold, and I can actually go down to the inventory and look at all the inventory that was available and do an item inquiry right there. So we can track serial and lot numbers. From an audit trail point of view, if you want to look at who are the users, what actions, what items, what have they done in the system, you can go to activity tracking where you can track things like their login, logouts, their file tracking, things like did they add master files, did they delete master files, and you can track this for the user and in any company. So you can actually set up what do you want to track. You don't need to track everything. You can just go and say, I just want to track deletion of transaction file for this user and this company. And that's the only thing it's going to track. And then you have inquiries and reports which you can run to go and look at how those transactions have been changed or deleted. We also talked about roles and the security and integrity of data within GP. So if we go and look at the different roles that can be defined in GP, it comes with a lot of predefined roles like accounting manager, AP clerk, bookkeeper, and within these, so if you select this particular option, it shows you what are the tasks that are available to this particular role, and you can, assigning them or taking them away is just a check mark, and you can actually just drill down from here to open up the task, at which level it tells you that whether it was an access to a window or a report or documents and customization tools. So all those things are defined under tasks, and these can be restricted to company. And any of the options that you see within the system palette here, this can be secured with another system password. So even though a person has access to coming to these modules, unless they have the password, they cannot make changes to this. You can define user access to different companies. So which are the companies? It will show you all the companies that are defined, and you can select which company they can work with. So these are the different levels of security that can be set up within GP. The last thing I want to talk about is we touched upon scalability, and we were looking at all the different modules that can be added. So other than GP is running on SQL Server, which is a robust database, so you can virtually go up to unlimited users on that. Other than that, or adding more users and increasing it to 500 or 1,000 users that you need, it can go up to that. Other than that, if you look at it from a breadth point of view, financials, sales, purchasing, but these are the other modules which can just be added. So manufacturing, if you go and start looking at manufacturing, MRP, forecasting, quality, quantitative analysis, job costing, sales configurator. So these are all modules which are already there within GP that can just plug in. Project accounting. So if you're looking at timesheet entry for projects or defining contracts and projects and cost categories within that, these can all be just plugged in. And they are integrated all over. So if you have project accounting and you are doing a purchase order, you can assign the purchase order directly to a project. You don't need to actually have these modules separately working. They are all tightly integrated. So if somebody goes in for a manufacturing module and they need to create a manufacturing order based on a sales order. So when they take in a sales order and the item that's being bought is actually a manufacturing order, an item that needs to be manufactured, the system is capable of creating that manufacturing order for you right from the sales transaction entry screen. So that's where these are all tightly integrated. Similarly, the field service modules. Field service modules, your service calls. So you can have service calls for equipment that you have sold out of GP. So that may be an item in GP inventory that you sold for which there was a warranty, and you have a service call for that. That can be handled. You can have a contract for it. You can set up preventive maintenance. You can do returns management. So when that item comes back, you can check whether it's in warranty or not. If it's not in warranty, are you going to invoice the person for the service charge for the repair, or are you going to send it to another vendor as a cross reference so that you get a back-to-back warranty from there? All those features are pre-built into the field service module. I don't have a lot of the other modules installed, but they would all seamlessly get installed and be available right from here for you to access them. And each of them has got the same set of all those reports that you see. So depending on whichever module I'm clicking on, these options here would change, but you would still see all the reports, the Excel reports, the smart lists, All those are available for you right from here. So that, I'll probably hand it over back to Don from here. Those were the items I just wanted to show you. Don, can you take over?
Sure. Thanks, Dipesh. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're reaching the end of our webinar here today, but we do have some time, a few minutes here for questions if you have any. So please go ahead and enter those in the Q&A tab at the top of the screen, and we'll take just a few of those as they come in. All right, Dipesh, we got a compliment from one of our attendees, so thank you very much for that nice compliment. We did have a couple questions come in prior to the webinar, Dipesh. I wanted to run by you. The first question is, how difficult is the transition from QuickBooks to Dynamics GP?
Good question. How difficult? I wouldn't say it is difficult. With QuickBooks, what GP has got, it's got a predefined path where they have actually created the migration path from QuickBooks into GP. So like we saw Integration Manager, there are certain predefined adapters that have already been built so that data can be pulled in from QuickBooks into GP and people can just start off. So I would say it's a pretty straightforward and simple transition or migration from QuickBooks into GP.
All right, another question that we had was, is the web or cloud access in GP 2013 an extra charge, or is that part of the standard offering?
From a licensing perspective, I think I'll have somebody from sales answer that, but all these options and all these deployment methodologies, these are all built into the product. So it's not that these are different products that we're buying, they're all a part of GP. So that is something which comes with GP. And you decide actually that do you want a web client or do you want to deploy it with on a client server environment, or you're going in for cloud deployment. So that would be a part of your purchase that you have with GP.
Okay, if anyone has any other questions, go ahead and enter those in that Q&A tab at the top of your screen, and we'll allow just another minute or two to have those questions come in if you have any. All right, it appears that there's no more questions, so I want to thank Dipesh very much for a great presentation today. I also want to thank our attendees for taking the time to sit through the webinar with us. If you have any questions regarding Dynamics GP 2013 or the transition from QuickBooks to GP 2013, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is right there on the screen, don@broadpoint.net, and I'll be happy to address whatever questions you have. And we'll also follow up with a copy of the presentation and the recording for you or any of the other members of your staff if they're interested in viewing it. So once again, thank you very much for joining us, and have a great afternoon. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.